I used to think I understood my wife. I thought I knew her better than anyone else, that after almost a decade together, there was nothing she could do that would truly shock me. I was wrong. It started with something small, too small to notice at first. A shift in her schedule, a change in her tone when she spoke to me, the way she looked past me instead of at me. We all tell ourselves that love is unbreakable, that time strengthens the bond between two people. But time does something else, too. It erodes. And I had no idea just how much damage had already been done. Her name is Millicent. Most people just call her Millie. We met when we were both in our 20s, broke and hopeful, dreaming of the life we were going to build. She was sharp, driven, and had this contagious energy that made people want to be around her. I was drawn in from the start, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. She was my best friend, my biggest supporter, and the woman I thought I would grow old with. But somewhere along the way, she started to drift. At first, it was just small things. Being more distracted when we talked, spending more time on her phone, getting home later than usual. I didn't think much of it. People change, schedules shift. But then she started disappearing. It was always last-minute plans. I'm going to dinner with friends, or I'll be out late. Don't wait up. The first time, I didn't question it. The second time, I felt a flicker of doubt. The third time, I started paying attention. Then came the night that changed everything. Friday night, no call, no text. I got home earlier than usual. It had been a long week, and all I wanted was to crack open a beer, sit on the couch, and unwind. But the house was silent. No music playing from the kitchen, no hum of conversation from the other room. Just emptiness. There was a note on the counter. Staying over at a friend's. See you tomorrow? That was it. No name, no details, nothing. A bad feeling settled in my stomach. I pulled out my phone and texted her. Me? Which friend? No response. An hour passed. 2. I called. No answer. By midnight, I wasn't just worried. I was angry. She hadn't mentioned plans earlier, hadn't given me any details, and now she was ignoring me? It wasn't like we had strict rules about checking in, but something about this felt off. I wasn't the kind of guy to jump to conclusions, but when your gut tells you something is wrong, it's usually right. And my gut was screaming. I barely slept. Morning came, but she didn't. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No messages, no missed calls. Her side of the bed was still empty, untouched. That's when I made my decision. If she wanted to disappear, she was about to find out how it felt when someone truly vanished. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. The road ahead was empty, stretching into the distance like an open question I didn't have an answer for. I had driven for hours, stopping only when the weight of what I had just done finally sank in. I had left, walked out without a word, just like she had done to me. And now, I was waiting, for what? I didn't know. Maybe for the anger to subside. Maybe for clarity. Maybe just to see if she even cared. My phone sat on the passenger seat, dark and silent. She still hadn't called. I exhaled, resting my head against the seat. Had I overreacted? Had I let my emotions get the better of me? Maybe there was an explanation, something I hadn't considered. But no matter how I spun it, the facts were the same. She disappeared for 24 hours without a word. A wife doesn't do that. Not in a marriage that still means something. I reached for my phone, hovering over her number. But just as my thumb hovered over the call button, the screen lit up. Her name. I let it ring. Again and again. A minute later, a text. Millie, where are you? I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of those 3 words. Not I'm sorry. Not I messed up. Just where are you? Like she had the right to know. The phone vibrated again. Millie, why aren't you home? I could feel my pulse in my ears. My jaw tightened. I was torn between wanting to respond and wanting her to sit with the same uncertainty she had forced on me. Instead, I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and started the car. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. Wherever I ended up, it wouldn't be back there. Hours passed. I stopped at a roadside diner, ordering coffee I didn't want just to have a reason to sit and think. Outside, the world moved on, people coming and going like it was just another normal day. But inside my head, nothing felt normal anymore. She was calling again. I watched the screen flash before declining the call. Almost instantly, another message came through. Millie, I don't understand what's going on. Just come home so we can talk. Talk. Now she wanted to talk. I tightened my grip on the coffee cup, staring at the words like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. She was acting like I was the one who had left her. But wasn't that exactly what I had done? I rubbed a hand over my face, exhaustion creeping in. Maybe I needed to hear her out. Maybe I owed it to myself to get real answers instead of playing this game of silence. And yet, something in my gut told me that if I went back now, I'd never really leave. I'd let her explain it away, make me feel like I was the one overreacting. I left a few dollars on the table, grabbed my phone, and walked back to my car. Another text was waiting. Millie, I need to tell you something. Please come home. Something shifted inside me. Not anger. Not resentment. Something colder. I turned off my phone. If she had something to tell me, she could wait. The drive stretched on, the empty road ahead mirroring the emptiness inside me. I had no destination, no real plan. Just the certainty that I couldn't go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I pulled into a rest stop somewhere off the highway, the neon glow of the gas station sign flickering against the dark sky. The place was almost deserted, just a few cars parked under the buzzing lights. I stepped out, stretching my legs, trying to shake the weight of exhaustion settling in my bones. Inside the gas station, I grabbed a bottle of water and a pack of gum, more out of habit than need. As I stood in line, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Millie. Millie, I don't understand why you're doing this. Just come home. We need to talk. I scoffed under my breath, shoving the phone back into my pocket. Now she wanted to talk. Now that she had come home to an empty house, to my note on the counter, to the same silence she had left me with. Did she feel it yet? The uncertainty, the helplessness? Did she finally get it? I paid for my things and walked back to my car, sinking into the driver's seat. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and for the first time since I'd left, the reality of what I had done hit me in full force. I had really left. No dramatic confrontation. No shouting match. Just absence. And yet, it didn't feel like enough. Because deep down, I knew she had an explanation waiting for me. Some excuse, some half-truth designed to soften the blow. And the worst part? A small part of me still wanted to hear it. I unlocked my phone. More missed calls. More messages. Millie, you're scaring me. Just please answer. Millie, I don't know what you think happened, but I promise it's not what you think. Millie, are you okay? That one made me pause. Are you okay? As if she wasn't the one who had disappeared for 24 hours without an explanation. As if I was the one who owed her reassurance. I exhaled slowly, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could end this now. I could text back, demand answers, give her the satisfaction of knowing where I was. Instead, I turned the phone off again. Let her sit with it. I spent the night in a cheap motel off the highway, the kind of place where the bed creaked if you moved too much and the walls were thin enough to hear conversations from the next room. I barely slept. My mind kept running through every possibility, every scenario. Where had she gone? Who had she been with? And why did she feel the need to lie about it? Because that's what this was. A lie. Even if she came home and gave me some perfect excuse, something that sounded reasonable, it wouldn't change the fact that she had let me sit in silence, let me wonder, let me hurt. And now, when she was the one facing the unknown, she couldn't handle it. I rolled over, staring at the ceiling. Did I want the truth? Or did I already know it? The next morning, I drove back into town. Not home. I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I stopped at a diner on the outskirts, a place Millie and I used to go when we first started dating. Back when things were simple, I sat at a booth in the corner, ordered black coffee, and watched the door, half expecting her to walk in. I could picture it too clearly, her rushing in, eyes wide, hands shaking, spilling out some desperate explanation. But she wasn't here. My phone vibrated again. This time, I turned it on. New message from Millie. Millie, if you don't want to talk to me, at least let me know you're safe. I don't know what's going on, but I need to see you. Please. And then, right below it, Millie, there's something you don't know. My grip tightened around the phone. I should have ignored it. I should have kept driving, kept her wondering, let her feel the weight of her choices. But that last message? It dug under my skin. What didn't I know? For the first time since I left, I considered going back. I sat there, staring at the screen, my coffee turning cold as the words sank in. There's something you don't know. A part of me wanted to laugh. She had the nerve to say that I didn't know something? After vanishing for an entire day, after ignoring my texts, after making me sit in silence, she was the one withholding information? I set my phone down, drumming my fingers against the edge of the table. I should have deleted the message, tossed the phone in the glove compartment, finished my coffee, and left town for a while. But I couldn't. Those 5 words had a hook in me, buried deep. Because what if? What if there really was an explanation? What if I had misread the situation? No. I shook my head, pushing the thought away. That was exactly how people got sucked back into things they should have walked away from. That was how you let yourself believe in lies. And yet, I picked up the phone. I could have called her right then and there, confronted her, demanded the truth. Instead, I did something else. I drove home. It wasn't a conscious decision. I didn't plan it. I just found myself turning onto familiar streets, rolling through the neighborhood where we had built a life together. As I pulled into the driveway, my stomach twisted. Her car was parked outside. She was home. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, trying to steady my breathing. The last time I had been here, I had been the one leaving. Now, I was the one returning. But this wasn't a reunion. This was something else entirely. I stepped out and walked up the front steps. Before I even reached for the door, it swung open. Millie stood there, looking pale, her eyes red like she'd been crying. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "I thought you weren't coming back." I folded my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "You thought wrong." Her lower lip trembled. "Where did you go?" I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. "Are you really asking me that? After what you did?" Her brows knit together. "What I did?" She sounded almost confused, like I was the one acting crazy. I clenched my jaw. "Millie, you disappeared for an entire day. No calls, no messages, nothing. What am I supposed to think?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked away, rubbing her arms. "I wanted to tell you. I didn't know how." That got my attention. I narrowed my eyes. "Tell me what?" Millie swallowed hard. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something in her expression that wasn't just guilt. It was fear. Then she whispered, "I wasn't alone." My entire body went cold. Of course, I had suspected it. The late nights, the secrecy, the distance. But hearing her say it, the confirmation of it, it was like someone had grabbed me by the throat and squeezed. I let out a sharp breath, stepping back. "You're serious?" She reached for my hand, but I yanked it away. "It's not what you think," she pleaded. "I didn't." "Didn't what?" My voice was sharper than I intended. "Didn't cheat? Didn't lie? Because that's exactly what this looks like." Her breath hitched. "I swear to you, it wasn't like that." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Then explain it. Right now. Because if you think I'm just going to stand here and listen to some half-assed excuse, you're dead wrong." She hesitated. Just for a second. But that second was enough. Because in that hesitation, I saw the truth. She wasn't telling me everything. And whatever she was hiding, it was bigger than I thought. She took a deep breath. "I need you to come inside." I almost walked away, almost turned around, got in my car, and drove until I didn't recognize the landscape anymore. But something about the way she said it, so quiet, so serious, made me step inside. The air in the house felt heavy, like something had settled over it in my absence. Millie shut the door behind me and turned, twisting her fingers together. Then she said, "I was with someone, but not in the way you think." I folded my arms. "Start talking." Her voice wavered. "I wasn't out with friends. That was a lie." I didn't react. She continued, "I was with someone I hadn't seen in years. Someone from my past." My pulse pounded in my ears. She hesitated again, then whispered, "My ex?" A hollow feeling settled in my chest. Of all the things she could have said, that was the worst. I clenched my jaw, my hands balling into fists at my sides. You were with your ex? She nodded, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I could barely think. My mind was racing, trying to process what she was telling me, trying to hold back the anger rising in my throat. I forced myself to stay calm. Why? She swallowed hard. Because he reached out to me a few weeks ago. He said he needed to talk. And I didn't want to tell you because I knew how it would look. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. Yeah? Well, it looks pretty damn bad, Millie. Her shoulders trembled. I didn't sleep with him. I swear. But, she broke off, taking a shaky breath. But he told me something. Something I wasn't ready for. I stared at her. What? She hesitated. Then she said the words that made my blood run cold. I think I made a mistake marrying you. The room spun. I had braced myself for a confession, for some lie, some excuse. But not this. Not my own wife standing in front of me, telling me she wasn't sure if she should have married me in the first place. I stepped back, my stomach twisting. She covered her mouth like she hadn't meant to say it, like the words had just slipped out. I didn't mean. But I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew the truth. And in that moment, something inside me broke. I stood there, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. My wife, had just told me she thought she made a mistake marrying me. The words echoed in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull, refusing to settle. Millie reached out, eyes wide, panic settling on her face like she had just realized she had said the quiet part out loud. I didn't mean it like that, she stammered, stepping closer. It came out wrong. I took a step back. No, I said, my voice eerily calm. I think it came out exactly the way you meant it. Her mouth opened, then shut. She didn't deny it. I felt something deep in my gut, something heavier than anger. Anger would have been easy. I could have yelled, thrown things, stormed out. But this was different. This was the kind of hurt that settled in your bones. She let out a shaky breath, rubbing her arms. I just meant that I cut her off. So what was it then? A mistake? A bad decision? A backup plan? Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't care. She could cry all she wanted, but I was the one standing here, listening to my wife tell me she had regrets about choosing me. I clenched my jaw, my pulse pounding in my ears. You spent a whole day with him, Millie, and now you're standing here, telling me this? She shook her head quickly. I didn't sleep with him. I swear to you, I didn't. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, well, that makes me feel so much better. She flinched. Please, just listen. He reached out because he's going through a divorce. He told me he regretted losing me, that he should have fought harder for us. And for a second, just a second, I wondered. She swallowed hard, like she didn't want to finish the sentence. But I already knew. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. You wondered if you should have chosen him instead of me. She looked at me like she wanted to say no, like she wanted to take it all back. But the silence between us told me everything. That hesitation again, that half-second delay that said yes. My stomach twisted. I had spent years giving everything I had to this marriage. Every late-night shift, every compromise, every sacrifice. I did it because I believed we were a team, because I believed in us. And now, I was standing in my own home, looking at the woman I loved, realizing she wasn't sure she loved me back. Or worse, maybe she never had. I dragged a hand over my face, my skin burning with frustration. You're unbelievable, I muttered. You spent the night with another man, the man you almost married, and now you're telling me you question being with me? Her voice cracked. I don't care. She froze. And the thing was, I meant it. I didn't care anymore. Whatever she was about to say, whatever excuse she was going to throw at me, I didn't want to hear it. Because the moment she hesitated, the moment she wondered if I was the wrong choice, something inside me snapped. I straightened, my hands curling into fists at my sides. You know what? Maybe you're right, Millie. She blinked, confused. What? Maybe you did make a mistake. I let out a sharp breath, my chest tight. And maybe it's time you fixed it. Panic flickered across her face. Wait, I didn't mean. But I was already walking past her. I grabbed my keys off the counter, heading straight for the door. She turned, her voice rising. Wait, where are you going? I stopped just long enough to look back at her. I'm giving you exactly what you wanted. And then, without another word, I walked out. I drove aimlessly, my mind racing faster than the car. The streets blurred together, the lights bleeding into each other. I felt nothing and everything all at once. I had left. Not like before. This wasn't about proving a point. This wasn't a game. This was real. And I had no intention of going back. I pulled into an old motel off the highway, barely registering the faded neon sign blinking overhead. I needed time. I needed space. I needed to breathe. The room was small, the kind of place you stay when you don't plan on staying long. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. Millie had questioned our marriage, had spent the night with her ex, had admitted, out loud, that she wondered if she had made the wrong choice. And the worst part? I didn't even know if she was wrong. I exhaled slowly, rubbing my face. I wasn't naive. I knew that relationships had rough patches, that people made mistakes. But this felt like something else entirely. Because trust? That wasn't something you could rebuild once it was gone. And Millie had shattered mine. I picked up my phone, staring at the screen. Missed calls. More messages. I didn't read them. I just sat there, in that cheap motel room, listening to the quiet. And for the first time in years, I realized I was completely, utterly alone. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in that cheap motel bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was trapped in some twisted dream I couldn't wake up from. My body was exhausted. My mind was spinning, and yet, I felt nothing. No sadness. No anger. Just a hollow, ringing silence that filled every inch of me. My phone was on the nightstand, screen dark except for the occasional glow from another incoming message. I had stopped checking them. At some point, I turned it off completely. I needed quiet. I needed to think. But no matter how hard I tried, all I could hear was her voice. I think I made a mistake marrying you. I squeezed my eyes shut, but it didn't help. The words were carved into my brain, playing on a loop, over and over again. By morning, I felt like I had aged 10 years. I sat up, rubbing my face, trying to shake off the fog in my head. My stomach was in knots, but I wasn't hungry. I felt disconnected, like I was watching my own life play out from a distance. I needed air. I grabbed my keys, threw on my jacket, and walked out of the motel room. The parking lot was empty except for a couple of old cars and a guy sitting outside his room, smoking a cigarette. He barely glanced at me as I passed. I got in my car and just drove. No destination, no plan, just the road and the endless stretch of nothing ahead of me. I needed to figure out what came next, because there was no going back. Not this time. I ended up at a diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where the coffee was always burnt, and the waitress called you Han, whether she knew you or not. I slid into a booth near the window, staring out at the parking lot, watching the world move on while my life sat at a dead stop. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a kind smile, poured me a cup of coffee without asking. Rough morning? I huffed out a laugh. Something like that. She nodded like she'd heard it before. Well, sugar makes everything better. She set down a little bowl of sugar packets next to my cup and walked away. I watched the steam rise from the coffee, my hands wrapped around the warm ceramic, grounding myself in something, anything, that wasn't the swirling mess in my head. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. I had turned it on a few minutes ago, partly out of habit, partly because some sick part of me wanted to see if she was still trying to reach me. She was. Millie, please, just talk to me. Millie, I don't know where you are. Just let me know you're safe. Millie, I need to see you. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around the cup. She needed to see me? Where was this desperation when I was the one left wondering? When I sat in that empty house, waiting for a call that never came? I swallowed down the bitterness rising in my throat. She didn't get to do this. She didn't get to act like she was the one hurting. I exhaled sharply and typed out a response. Me? I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I hit send before I could overthink it. The reply came almost instantly. Millie, where are you? Can we meet? I stared at the screen. I should have ignored it. Should have turned the phone off again and kept driving until I didn't feel anything anymore. But instead, I found myself typing. Me, why? So you can tell me more about how you regret being with me? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, the response came. Millie, that's not what I meant. Please, just let me explain. Explain. She wanted to explain. But what was left to say? I shoved the phone into my pocket and pushed away from the table, throwing some cash down for the coffee. If she wanted to talk, I'd let her. But not because I wanted an apology. No, I wanted to look her in the eyes when I told her that whatever she was holding on to, whatever hope she had that I'd come back, it was already gone. I texted her a location. A park near the house, one we used to go to when we first started dating. It felt fitting, one last meeting in a place where we used to be happy. When I pulled into the parking lot, she was already there. She was sitting on a bench, her hands clasped together, shoulders hunched like she was trying to make herself smaller. When she saw me, she stood quickly, relief flashing across her face. I got out of the car but didn't move closer. I kept my distance. She hesitated, then took a small step forward. You came. I stuffed my hands in my pockets. You wanted to talk. So talk. She exhaled shakily, like she was trying to keep herself together. I don't know where to start. I tilted my head. Start with why you spent the night with him. She winced, like the words physically hurt. I told you. Yeah, you didn't sleep with him. I let out a sharp breath. Forgive me if I don't feel like giving you a gold star for that. Her face crumpled. I messed up. I barked out a bitter laugh. No kidding. She looked away, eyes glistening. I didn't go there with bad intentions. I thought I needed closure. I wanted to know if I had made the right choice. Something inside me twisted. And? Did you? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And that was my answer. I nodded slowly, stepping back. That's all I needed to know. Panic flashed across her face. Wait, please, don't. But I was already walking away. She reached out, grabbing my arm. I don't want to lose you. I turned, looking her dead in the eyes. You lost me the second you wondered if I was the wrong choice. Her breath hitched. I pulled away and got back into my car, slamming the door shut. She stood there, frozen, watching me like she wanted to say something, do something. But it was too late. I started the car. And this time, when I drove away, I didn't look back. The road stretched ahead of me, endless and unfamiliar. I didn't know where I was going, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I had spent years building a future with Millie, sacrificing, working, believing in something that was never as strong as I thought. And now, the truth was staring me in the face. She had questioned us. She had questioned me. There was no coming back from that. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my mind replaying the moment she stood there in that park, unable to answer me. That half-second hesitation was louder than any confession. She wasn't sure. And if she wasn't sure, then what the hell was I holding on to? My phone buzzed on the seat next to me. I didn't need to check it. I knew who it was. Millie, I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face before finally glancing down at the screen. Millie, please just tell me where you're going. We can fix this. Fix this. Like it was some kind of broken chair that just needed a few nails and glue. I exhaled sharply, gripping the wheel tighter. She still didn't get it. This wasn't about one mistake. This was about trust. And once trust was broken, it was never the same again. I pulled off the highway into a rest stop, the kind with a lone vending machine and a couple of empty picnic tables. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. It would have been beautiful if I weren't so numb. I sat on the hood of my car, staring at nothing, letting the weight of everything settle in. And then, for the first time since I left, I thought about what came next. Because what happens after you leave your life behind? Where do you go when the place that used to be home doesn't feel like home anymore? I could stay in a motel for a while, figure things out, but that felt like running in circles. I didn't want to wake up every morning in a rented room, living out of a suitcase, waiting for the pain to fade. No, I needed a plan. I pulled out my phone, not to check Millie's messages, but to do something I should have done a long time ago. I opened my bank app and started moving my money. All these years, I had worked my ass off while she had the luxury of working from home, picking her hours. I had paid most of the bills. The house? My name was on the deed. The accounts? I had been the one putting money away for our future. A future that clearly didn't exist anymore. I transferred every last cent of my personal savings into a separate account. Then I looked at our joint account, the one she had access to. I didn't touch her money. I wasn't here to play games. But I did one final thing before logging out. I removed my name from the account entirely. She wanted to figure out her life? She could do it without me. By the time I checked my phone again, there were more messages. Millie, I don't know why you're doing this. You don't even want to hear me out? Millie, can we please talk? Millie, I miss you. I messed up, but I love you. Please don't shut me out like this. I scoffed under my breath. Now she loved me. Now she missed me. Now that I was gone, I didn't respond. Instead, I did something that hurt more than I expected. I blocked her number. Not out of spite. Not to punish her, but because I needed to move on. I climbed back into my car, my chest feeling tight, my thoughts screaming at me that I had just burned my entire life to the ground. But the thing about fire? Sometimes, you have to let everything burn before you can start over. And that's exactly what I intended to do. I drove. Not aimlessly this time, but with purpose. For the first time in days, maybe years, I wasn't running in circles, trying to hold on to something that was already broken. I was heading forward, towards something new. I had spent too long believing that love meant staying, no matter how much it hurt. That if I just worked harder, sacrificed more, did everything I could, things would somehow fix themselves. But love wasn't supposed to feel like convincing someone to choose you. And I wasn't going to do that anymore. By the time I reached my destination, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving streaks of red and gold across the sky. I pulled into a small coastal town, a place I had only ever driven through on my way to somewhere else. But tonight, it felt like exactly where I needed to be. I found a modest motel by the water, checked in, and tossed my bag onto the bed. The room was nothing special, just a clean bed, a nightstand, and a window overlooking the ocean. But it was mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, exhaling slowly. The weight in my chest was still there, but it was lighter, less suffocating. I had walked away, and the world hadn't ended. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of waves crashing against the shore. For the first time in forever, I didn't check my phone the moment my eyes opened, because there was no one left to check for. Instead, I got dressed and walked down to a little cafe near the beach, ordering a coffee and sitting outside as the early morning sun warmed my face. A waitress, probably a few years younger than me, set down my cup and gave me a curious look. "You're not from around here, are you?" I shook my head. "Nope, just passing through." She smiled. "Well, welcome to the quiet life. People tend to get stuck here, in a good way." I huffed a small laugh. "That doesn't sound so bad." She tilted her head, studying me for a moment. "You look like someone who's trying to figure things out." I looked down at my coffee, running my fingers along the rim of the cup. "Something like that." "Well," she said, adjusting her apron, "if you stick around long enough, you might find exactly what you need." And maybe she was right. Over the next few days, I let myself just be. No stress, no obligations, no painful conversations. I walked the shore, listened to the ocean, and let the past drift away, piece by piece. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing again. Millie was part of another life, one that no longer had a hold on me. And whatever came next, I was finally ready for it.